I read tons of books this month. I finished 14 and I DNF'd 3. I decided to go ahead and include my DNFs and kind of just explain why I DNF'd them. So anyways, I am going to start my reviews from my lowest rating DNF up to my highest rating and favorite for the month. And let's get into it. The first book that's on my DNF, so there's 3 total. First one is The Thieves' Gambit by Kavion Lewis. The reason why I think this wasn't for me was that it felt very young on the young adult spectrum. So that genre really entices a lot of people, and some books appeal more towards teenagers, whereas some books appeal more towards young adults. And this one just felt a little too teen for me. I had a hard time with just the entire setup. So the story is about a heist, and the main character is a teenage girl, and her mom essentially gets kidnapped, and she has to join this competition of different thieves. And if you win, you get a wish, essentially. And so she joins it, and her wish is going to be to rescue her mom. The entire setup for it just felt very juvenile. I had so many questions that just teenagers don't always ask. So that's where I was struggling the most with it. It was hard for me to suspend my disbelief and just buy why we were doing this heist and like why we were just believing everything that the people in charge were telling us, and we weren't questioning authority. And then I had a lot of predictions of where I thought it was going to go, and I did look up spoilers for when I finished it, and I was right along my lines of guessing, so I felt validated in DNFing this for me. But this is a cute book, and I would definitely recommend this book for teenagers or those who aren't going to have a hard time suspending disbelief the way I did from an adult perspective. So a cute book, it just wasn't for me. The next book I DNF'd was an actual NetGalley ARC that I received called Conversations with the Tarot, and this was in the poetry section of NetGalley, which I tend to peruse at different times, and it was pitched as kind of a poetry book for people who are interested in learning about tarot or new to the tarot, and that's what the author did was write a poem that represented each card as well as a personal reflection from when they drew that card from themselves. So this kind of read like an individual person's diary as they did daily tarot drawings for themselves. What I didn't love about this one was that it was set up where you got the poem and then you got the reflection, and to me the poem made the most sense after the reflection, so I was kind of doing it in reverse. I would skip the poem, read the reflection, go back and read the poem, and just that weird format kind of threw me for a loop. And while I was enjoying it, I didn't feel like I was gaining as much from the book as that I wanted to and wasn't connecting. So I DNF'd this one around the 45% mark. Maybe if I had a physical copy instead of the ebook, I would have liked it more, but it just didn't hold my attention. So that one I sat down for a while. The last book on my DNF for February, I am really sad that it ended up on here, and I might come back to this one later. I'm really torn on it. So it is called A War Around Us by Kay Dossel. This is book 2 of a series, and the first book, which is called A Bullet Between Us, I loved. I gave that book 5 stars. It was like a mafia dark romance, and I loved it so much. I was very excited for this War Around Us. The War Around Us was the sequel. So book 1 ends in a bit of a cliffhanger, which I won't give specifics here, but it ends in a cliffhanger, and we know that book 2 is going to be following 2 different characters than what book 1 did. And book 2 is going to be following the head boss of one of the mafia families and a arranged marriage with someone else. I tend to really love arranged marriages and just the tension and conflict that usually provides between the 2 leading characters of a book. So it's usually a trope I like, and that's why I was excited to read this one. So I started it, and I made it like 25% in, and I just was feeling no real connection to the male or female main characters. Their dynamic between them just was not clicking for me for whatever reason. Like I said, because I loved book 1 so much, and I do own this one on my Kindle, so I might revisit it. I don't know. We'll have to see. But for right now, I'm gonna DNF it and move forward because I was excited to get to the other books. Okay, so that's the books that DNF'd, but let's get to the books that actually finished and kind of what I thought about all of them. All right, for my 3-star reads, George Washington Spymaster, How the Americans Outspied the British and Won the Revolutionary War by Thomas B. Allen. So a little backstory, I homeschool my 9th grade son. And so you'll probably see in some of my wrap-ups books that we are reading for school that we have finished. So this is a 3-star, and I know I said in 2024 I was going to DNF 3 stars, but I couldn't really DNF this one because we were using it for school. I will say that my son loved it. He gave it 5 stars. He tends to give 5 stars to a lot of books. He is not a very hard critic with books. But this one is about George Washington and the spy networks that they set up during the Revolutionary War. I found it very informative. It is a middle grade nonfiction book, but it wasn't as fun as I thought it was going to be. With the spymaster element, I was just expecting more playfulness, or I don't know, I just expected it to be a lot juicier feeling than what it was, but it read more like a textbook to me, and it was very dry. So I did not personally love this one. One of the features that did have that I thought was cool was at the back of the book, it has like a spy code, and there are a few little examples of what a spy note would look like, and then you can go use the appendix in the back and decode the message yourself. So that was neat, and my son did have fun decoding one of the spy messages and seeing like how arduous that process is. So it was informational, and like I said, he loved it. I didn't, because I felt like it was a little bit dry compared to some of our other history books that we read. So there's that book. This next book, I think that different people are going to have strong opinions about this one way or another. So, House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. As you know, this was on my most anticipated new releases of 2024. I am a Sarah J. Maas fangirl. I love her ACOTAR series, her Throne of Glass series. I gave 5 stars to Crescent City 1. I gave 4 stars to Crescent City 2. But this book, Crescent City 3, only got 3 stars for me. This is gonna be a hard one to talk about without doing spoilers, but if you want specifics, you guys, you just let me know, because I have a lot to discuss with this. This was our Live with Coco and Chi book club pick for February, so I discussed it fully. I think there's like a 2-hour video saved over on my Instagram if you want to watch the full discussion. Me and my co-host had different ratings for it. I only gave it 3 stars, and vaguely speaking, I'll explain why. This book was doing too much. It was doing too much. It couldn't decide what genre it wanted to be. Is it fantasy? Is it science fiction? What is happening here? I did not love the main character. I felt like the main character did not earn the reputation that main characters of Sarah J. Maas's books tend to earn. The antagonists were kind of absent for a big part of this book, and I was like, where are the bad guys? Why are we not experiencing any conflict? They must be doing something super devious off the page. But then it just really didn't happen that way. I also expected a lot more like pain and suffering and feelings from this one, and it was really just not there. Some secondary characters in this book, known as Lydia and Rune, they were my favorite parts, and they really stole the show for me. If it wasn't for them, this book might have been lower. This is a huge book, super thick, and yeah, will I read the next one if there's a next one? Yes. Will I be as excited to read it? Probably not. Yeah, so I mean, I could do a whole video on just this book. So anyways, it was a little bit of a disappointment to me, and it was only 3 stars. All right, for this next book, it's rated 3.75 stars. So I do quarter-star ratings, mostly because I use Storygraph now, and they allow me to do quarter-star ratings, and I kind of love that because sometimes books kind of fall in between the ratings. So this book for me, Ruthless, Vows by Rebecca Ross, it is a 3.75. And a little backstory, so this is book 2 of a duology, and Divine Rivals is the first book, which I I read last year, and it was probably my favorite book of 2023, Divine Rivals. Loved it so much. And I was very hyped for this. This book came out in December 2023, which I pre-ordered. A lot of friends got to it before me and said that they were a little disappointed. So it actually had me kind of postponing it because I did not want to be disappointed. And while I still enjoyed it, I did not want to DNF it. It just did not live up to that 5-star hype of book one. And that's kind of a bummer. There's a memory trope in here that I don't necessarily love. And one of my main critiques for this book was that there comes a part in it that uses music as a magic system. And Rebecca's done that with the last 3 books of hers that I've read. And I loved the original magic system in this book, which was related to the typewriters. And I wish we'd have leaned heavier into that aspect. Music just felt a little recycled to me, and I think part of that bored me. And then I was missing a lot of the depth and backstory of the gods of this world, because this world is set all around 2 gods that are having war against each other, and they're using humans to essentially be their soldiers, and our main characters are kind of caught in the middle between these 2 feuding gods. And so I was looking for a lot more backstory into the gods and just depth to them, and what we got was just enough to tell the story, but not enough to make me love the story. So while this will still be a duology I will probably recommend, I will usually recommend it as the first book is my favorite. So anyways, this was a 3.75 for me. I will read more Rebecca Ross though, because historically speaking, I love her books. I think this is the first book of hers that I have rated lower than a 4-star. So she's pretty consistent with what I like. Okay, now we're going to get to some of the books that I am more excited to tell you about. So this is my 4-star read, What Kind of Woman by Kate Baer. And this is a collection of poetry. So I love poetry, and I always have it on my yearly goals to read more of it. I want to read at least 1 collection a month. Sometimes I get distracted or I even forget, and then I'm like, oh my gosh. Almost every time I pick one up, it's rare that I don't finish it, and it's rare that I don't really enjoy it. Poetry just speaks to me, and I tend to have a lot of fun like adding tabs to the book, highlighting some of my favorites, and so forth. So anyways, this was a random find that I got on the clearance section one day at Books A Million, and brought it home and had it on my shelf for a rainy day. So this collection focuses on the different roles a woman takes on in her life, such as relationships, womanhood in general, being a mother, being a wife, being a friend. That is the focus of this collection. It's very feministic, woman-centered. I connected mostly to the ones about the relationship, some of the motherhood ones, but not all of them, and to some of the ones about being a wife as well. And while I didn't love every single poem in this collection, I enjoyed most of it. And it'll be one that I'm glad to have on my shelf, and one that I will revisit my favorite tabbed pages to read again. Lunar Love Story was a 4.25 star read for me. So I actually got this book from Bookish First, which is a partnership through NetGalley, and you can create a free account on Bookish First, but it's a place where you can get early copies of books in exchange for reviews. And they have a whole system on that website, which you can check out, of how to enter raffles to win books, and you get a sneak peek into them, and then you can write a review and be entered in to win a drawing to win a book. So this is a book that I won off of Bookish First, and it came out in February. So this is a brand new book, and it's kind of perfect. So this is Lunar New Year Love Story, and it starts off around that holiday, the Lunar New Year, which happens to also be around Valentine's Day. And it's funny because I actually started reading this book on the Lunar New Year and finished, I think, like the day after Valentine's Day. So it was just like the perfect February read for me. But we we follow our main character, and this is kind of a fantasy contemporary romance story, I think I would say. And the main character has a special connection with kind of like a little Cupid that follows her around every year at Valentine's Day, and how Valentine's Day is very special to her. Her name is Valentina, and we kind of go from there, and we follow her specifically over a year and a few years, and we see her previous Valentine's Days and Lunar New Year's working up to the current day. And then she makes a deal with this spiritual creature, and she has a year to prove it. And so we kind of go through her with that year. And it's centered around romance. Valentina believes her family is cursed, and she cannot have love because her family is cursed in love. What I really adored about this is that it goes a lot deeper with the character development and the familial relations than what most graphic novels do. It is a little bit thicker than some of my other graphic novels, so I really appreciated the depth of the development, and it just felt like a very full story and lots of little details. So it does have a love triangle in here. I know some people either love or hate that trope, so I like to mention that it does have a love triangle, but it's a really cute story, and I loved the illustrations as well. It has some cultural aspects into it about lion dancing that you learn, and I thought that was really neat. So anyways, if you're looking for something a little bit different and centered around a holiday, Valentine's Day or Lunar New Year, this is the one I would check out. All right, we've hit my 4.5 star section for February reads. This children's book, Circle by Mark Barnett. So I add in different children's books throughout the year if it's something that I've heard everyone talking about online or I've come across it. So last year I watched a documentary at our local documentary film festival here, and it talked about different children's book authors and illustrators and what makes a good children's book. And it was a riveting documentary, and it highlighted a few different authors, including Mark Barnett. He was on here, and he talked about his book Triangle, which I had read, and it was so cute. And I realized that Triangle was a part of a series, and Circle was the second book in that series. So anyways, I got this from the library because the first one was so cute. I just needed to read the next one to see if it was just as cute as the first one, and it was. So this is a very straightforward children's novel. The main character is a circle, and what I love about this one is the humor in it as well as a deeper message. And the circle one, the message in it that I interpreted was that sometimes the things that we create seem unimportant or not good enough to us, but to other people it looks like acts of brilliance, or art even. And so I just think that's a really special message to tell kids, because all of us feel self-doubt, and sometimes it's hard for us to see what we create and who we are, and it's easier for other people to see that in us, and that can be very uplifting. So this was the book. The illustrations in these are pretty standard, like black and monotone in color, but that doesn't mean that they're not engaging and fun to read. So this was 4.5 stars. It was cute. I think I knocked half a star because at the very end it asked kind of like an interactive question for kids, and sometimes those come across a little cheesy to me but I understand why they're there to help young readers interact with the book as well. But that's the only reason why this one didn't get the 5-star from me, but still super cute, and I just love this series as a whole from this author. Nick Stone is one of my favorite authors. I have read tons of her books, her young adult books, her middle grade books. I am always on the hunt for her next book, and this Chaos Theory she released in 2023. So it's less than a year old, and it is a love story about two teenagers who start as friends and turn into a little bit more. But there are some heavy themes in here, which I appreciate because growing up as a teenager who experienced experienced a lot of heavier things, these are the kind of books that I would relate to. And I love that Nick doesn't shy away from that, and she treats teenagers with respect of that they're emotionally mature to handle some of these themes, and they are in fact handling a lot of these themes in their own lives. So some of the themes in here, which I'm referring to, are bipolar disorder, mental health overall, alcoholism, infidelity of a parent, the loss of a sibling, so intense grief, and self-harm and abortion. So like I said, there's a lot of themes to unpack in this one, but what Nick does so well is that she treats all of these topics, which are very heavy, she treats them with such grace, and she is very careful and deliberate with how she portrays different stuff, and she does it in a very loving and positive and optimistic way and an empowering way. Specifically, how she talks about and explains mental health and the main character's like perspective of that and how they learn about it was just extremely powerful. I think that many people can learn how to be more empathetic to those who struggle with mental health from reading this book. So this was extremely powerful and a wonderful book. So it's shorter, but it's packed with good stuff, and don't let the themes scare you away. They are all done just so well. So I definitely recommend this to teenagers or adults, either one. It's a fantastic book. Okay, this next book is another one that I read with my son for school. This we read for one of our subjects we call life skills, and I picked different books that I think would be good for us to discuss, whether or not it's about character building or different careers, that kind of thing. So this was How to Be a Good Creature by Cy Montgomery. So Cy Montgomery is an author, she is a naturalist, she is a researcher, she is a very famous woman who has worked with a lot of wild animals and documenting them for different projects and so forth. And so this is a collection of short stories that focus on different animals she's interacted with in her life and lessons that she learned from those animals. So this is a memoir of sorts that she tells through the stories. What I really loved is that she goes chronologically. And so the first story she starts with is about a dog, and it's her first dog that she had and kind of what established her love for animals and so forth. So each chapter focuses on a specific animal from her life, and we learn about that animal and what it is that she learned about herself from this animal interaction. And it was just a really sweet and heartwarming book. There is animal death in here, so that's sad. I tend to not love books that have animal death, but this one was about the circle of life, and it was important in her story as well, and how, because a lot of us humans have longer lifespans than the animals we love and keep, so we do have to deal with the grief of losing those animals and kind of what comes next for us and so forth. But anyway, some of the animals featured in here, different dogs, an octopus, a weasel, a spider, I was gonna say tarantula, but I think it was just I don't remember if it was exactly a tarantula or a different specific spider, and a pig, to just name a few. So it's a variety of animals, a very cute book. Meg Schaefer, The Wishing Game, is my last book in my 4.5 star category. So this was part of my traveling bookkeepers postal reading book club that I do. And I actually did a full vlog on this book, me reading it. So you can check that out. This was so fun. The Wishing Game is all about, our main character is a teacher's aide in California. And she moved to California from Maine because she was trying to get away from her family that she's estranged from. And while she's in California, she gets really connected to a young boy that was in her class who ends up in the foster care system after the death of his parents. And our main character wants to adopt him so badly, and she loves him with all her heart, but she is just financially not in a spot to where she can. She doesn't have reliable transportation. She does not have her own home. There's a lot of things in her way before she can adopt this little boy. Well, an opportunity comes about. There's a famous children's author. And this children's author who used to publish 10 books a year and had this really renowned series of children's books that our main character loved as a child and she loves teaching in her classrooms. This author who used to write all these books stopped writing them for the past 6 years with no explanation. And everyone's wanting to know when the next Clockwork Island book is going to be coming out. It's been 6 years and no one's heard anything. Well, the author announces a competition. The author announces that he has one copy of a brand new book and he's inviting 4 people to his house on this island for a competition. And if you win, you get to win the only copy of his book, which will be huge because you could sell it for so much money and it would solve a lot of the financial struggles our main character has. So she goes to the island and she participates in this competition to win the book. It is adorable. I loved, like, if I could read any of the children's books mentioned in this book, I absolutely would. That's how intriguing they were. The dedication in here says something about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and that's exactly what this feels like. Oh, this book is dedicated to Charlie and to all of us who are still looking for our golden tickets. This feels like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but replace the candy factory for a book lover's dream, right? Your childhood favorite author that you would have lost your mind to go to. It's just wild. So it was very cozy. It was very sweet, heartwarming. There are some sad elements to it that will have you tearing up and very emotional. But this was an unexpected and fun read. All right, we've made it to the 5-star books. Yes. All right, so I had 5 5-star reads this month, and I will start with Little Moments of Love by Katana Comics. This is actually a reread for me. I did a video about comic collections that I recommended, and I talked about this one, and I got myself all excited for it. I realized I hadn't read it in the past 4 years, and so I was hooked, and I just had to read it again. It's about Katana, who is the writer. She wrote this series and drew this series based on her own personal romantic relationship with her boyfriend. And so it's just 2 people who are young, in love, and want to spend as much time as possible together because of that. It's just hilarious and adorable. And if you're just looking for something cute, definitely pick it up. I love Katana Comics, and this was so fun to reread again. I'm also thinking 2024 is going to be a year of rereads for me. I am just really being pulled to a lot of my favorites, so expect there to be at least one reread book on my recaps each month. Okay, so I read Circle and I had to read Square. Square is the 3rd and final book in the Shapes children's book trilogy by Mark Barnett. This one was hilarious. We get to see not only Square as the main character in this one, but we also see Circle and Triangle from the 1st and 2nd book as well. And this one starts off with them playing a game of hide and seek. I'm telling you, it made me laugh out loud. It was so funny of just how this game of hide and seek goes. And I forced my husband to read these because I just thought it was so adorable. And I just couldn't. So this one won the 5-star mark. If you have little kids in your life or don't and just want to read a cute little children's book, I'm telling you, this series is it. I love it. Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. My husband read this book years ago and loved it. He bought it and said, you have to read this. I am not a huge nonfiction reader when left to my own devices, and so we've had this on the shelf for a while. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to pick it up. I'm going to read it. And I started it on ebook one night, and I probably read maybe the first 40 pages, and I just wasn't into it. And I told him the next morning, I was like, man, I might have to DNF it. I don't know. I said, it's hard for me to read. I'm not really grasping what the author is saying, and it was just kind of confusing to me, and I was just having a struggle with it. But I wanted to finish it because, like I said, my husband loved it, and I wanted to finish it. I was like, I don't know. I'm going to try getting the audiobook and see if that helps. And it changed everything. I restarted it from the jump and did the audio, and I don't know why, but that format just helped the story click for me. And something about the way it's spoken sounds more like prose or poetry even, and the inflection in the narrator's voice just helped like bring home the points of what the narrator was saying, and it's like it could click. I got it once I could hear it. So it's crazy how that happens, like that I was physically reading a book and was thinking about DNFing it because I wasn't comprehending. It felt too intellectual for me, it felt too above my head for me, but then switching it to audio and hearing it completely revolutionized that, and this ended up being a 5-star read. So if you're not familiar with what this book is, it was written by the author as a letter to his 15-year-old son about what it means to be Black in America. Or really, I don't even know if it's specific to America, though that's where these characters are from. But the author shares his own experiences and kind of his own steps to self-discovery and what that was for him, and how things changed for him a lot between what he experienced as a child and what his parents experienced as a child, and what his son is now experiencing as a 15-year-old. However, there are certain truths for them being a Black body that transcends time and is still impacting them generation to generation. So this was hard to read at times and heavy, but it was very powerful and moving, and I can absolutely see why it was so recommended by my husband and won this award, and I'm really happy that I have read it. So if you have read this or interested in it, I definitely recommend trying it, and if the print or ebook version does not click for you, the audio was fantastic, and that's what hooked me in. So Between the World and Me, it's a great book. This next book was an ebook, so I don't have a physical copy to show you, but it was This Winter by Alice Oseman. This is a Heartstopper novella. If you watch my January wrap-up, you already know I'm a Heartstopper fan. I read Heartstopper Volume 5 in January. So this was a little novella, and it was so cute. I want to say it came out in December of last year, and we follow basically our favorite characters all throughout Christmas Day. So it was really cute winter setting, and all took place over Christmas Day. It picks up, well, I don't want to give spoilers for the story, but Charlie is going through some things. I'll talk a little vaguely here. Charlie's going through some things and just got back home from being away for a little while. So it's his readjustment to being back home. And what was really cute about this one was that each chapter, so it was only 3 chapters long, and each chapter was from one of the Spring siblings. So you have Charlie, who has an older sister named Tori. So we get Tori, we get Charlie, and then we also get their younger brother Oliver. And I thought that was adorable that we got the perspective of each of the Spring siblings, and it was so cute. So if you're a Heartstopper fan, read it. You'll adore it. There were some illustrations at the end of the book and some in between each chapter, so you could check that out, but this is mostly going to be a chapter book, so it's more reading and not just the graphic novels like the main Heartstopper series is. An adorable novella, and I loved it. It was a great read in February. Okay, last but not least, Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands by Heather Fawcett. This is my favorite book of February, 5 stars the whole way. This is book 2 in the Emily Wilde series. I read book 1 in January with our book club, and I had to pick this one up as a buddy read with some of my friends that also loved the first one. I loved this one even more than book 1, which is crazy, I know. And again, I'm not going to tell you too many spoilers, but we pick up a few months after book 1 leaves off, and Emily is going on another research adventure with, you'll see characters again such as Wendell Bamblebee, and you'll see one of my favorite side characters from book 1, Poe, makes a reappearance as well. I love the adventure that we go on. I love the romance arc that this takes, and I adore that we get to go into Fairy once again, in a different area of Fairy. We also get to meet a new creature called Snowball, which was amazing. So anyways, this is just like a cozy fantasy read, and it's so fun. If you enjoyed book 1, definitely pick up book 2 and I'm so excited to now know this is not going to be the end of the series. There will be more. So while this one does come to a conclusion at the end, there is going to be more from this world, and there will be a book 3, which I can't wait for. So those are my 14 finished books for February, and March is already starting off strong, and I can't wait to see what new favorites reveal themselves. So let me know what your favorite book was for February. I'm curious to what everyone read and what they loved.